All right, today we're opening up a case file. We're going to reconstruct the final moments of the man they called public enemy number one, John Dillinger. The place is Chicago. The date, July 22nd, 1934. It's hot, the air is thick, and a massive nationwide manhunt for America's most wanted fugitive is about to come to a very sudden, very violent end. The time is 10:30 p.m. Outside the Biograph Theater, a team of federal agents and city cops are trying to look casual, melting into the shadows. Their eyes are glued to one spot, the theater exit. They're waiting for one man to walk out of that crowd. And then he's spotted. The trap is about to spring. So how did they pull this off? To really get it, we have to reconstruct the entire operation, piece by piece. Here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at why the trap was closing in, then the crucial tip from an informant. After that, we'll walk through the actual operational exhibits, the map, the signals, and that final fatal countdown. So, let's set the stage. By the summer of '34, John Dillinger wasn't just some bank robber. He was public enemy number one. To some people, he was a folk hero, but to the FBI, he was a ghost they'd been chasing all over the Midwest. I mean, you have to understand, his gang's heists and these incredible jailbreaks were front-page news. They left a trail of dead men, empty bank vaults, and raided police armories. They were making law enforcement look like fools, and the whole country was watching. So the big break in the case, it didn't come from a dramatic car chase or a shootout. Nope, it came from a simple phone call on a Saturday afternoon, July 21st. The call was from a woman named Anna Sage. She knew Dillinger's girlfriend, and she had a major problem. She was about to be deported. So she called the FBI with a deal on the table. She wanted the cash reward, sure, but more importantly, she wanted them to stop her deportation. So here's the deal she laid out. She would deliver Dillinger. She knew he was planning to go to the movies the next night with her and his girlfriend. But here was the catch, the really tricky part. She didn't know which theater. It was going to be either the Marlboro or the Biograph. This one little detail forced the FBI to split their teams and set up two separate traps, basically gambling on which one Dillinger would walk into. Okay, so with this lead, the FBI's Chicago office, run by agents Melvin Purvis and Samuel Cowley, started drawing up the plan. Let's look at Exhibit A, the map of the perimeter. Now, J. Edgar Hoover himself gave a direct order. Do not try to take him inside the theater. No way. The risk of a massive shootout with hundreds of innocent people was just too high. The whole plan, everything, hinged on grabbing Dillinger after he stepped onto the sidewalk. The agents were basically making a bet. They figured that when Dillinger and the women came out, they would turn left and head south. So they stacked their agents along the storefronts down the block, creating a kind of corridor that they could collapse the second he was inside it. And this alley, this was the absolute critical choke point. It was the most obvious escape route. And sure enough, the second Dillinger sensed something was wrong, he made a break right for it. They had to have it covered. But, setting up a perimeter is one thing. This brings us to Exhibit B, the identifiers. How on earth, in the dim streetlights, could agents be 100% sure they had the right guy in a crowd of people pouring out of a movie? The whole operation really boiled down to two different signals. First, a signal to find the target in the crowd, and then a totally separate signal, the trigger, to kick off the takedown. And this is where we get to bust a pretty famous myth. You've probably heard of the legendary woman in red. Well, it wasn't a red dress. FBI files are clear. Anna Sage wore a white blouse and an orange skirt. The color had nothing to do with fashion. It was a beacon, chosen specifically so the agents could spot her and by extension Dillinger from a distance. And the trigger to go? It was brilliantly simple and totally silent. Agent Melvin Purvis would be standing in a doorway. The moment Dillinger walked right past him, Purvis would casually light a cigar. No shouting, no radios, just that small flame was the signal for every single agent and cop to move in. So the plan is set. Sunday, July 22nd. Agents are in position at both theaters, the Marlboro and the Biograph. All they can do now is wait for Anna Sage to give the final word on where they're heading. At 8:30, the call comes in. They're at the Biograph. All the federal forces rush to that one spot. And, ironically, the movie they're watching is a gangster film called Manhattan Melodrama. It's basically a 2-hour clock ticking down the end of the manhunt. At 10:30, they walk out. Dillinger strolls past Purvis. Purvis lights his cigar, and the operation is live. The shooting, The whole confrontation was over in just a few seconds. Agents fired 5 shots, 3 of them hit Dillinger. And just like that, a 13-month crime spree that had terrified the entire Midwest was finished. This takedown was huge for the FBI. It basically cemented their reputation as serious crime fighters. You could say it marked the beginning of the end for that whole gangster era, because it proved that an organized federal agency could, in fact, hunt down and stop anyone. So you have to ask, was this whole thing just a lucky break? No, not at all. What you should take away from this is that it was the result of a very deliberate, very systematic process. See, the key takeaway here is this. This operation wasn't about a chase. It was about building a cage. The FBI built this cage piece by piece. They used his predictable habits against him. They used a visual marker to isolate him. They controlled the exact timing of the strike, and they flooded the zone with overwhelming force. They locked him into a single time and place. And that's really why this matters. The takedown of public enemy number 1 shows us a fundamental truth about how these things work. The most complex, high-stakes manhunts, they often end not with a wild chase, but with a quiet, carefully built trap that makes capture all but inevitable.